Hey everyone, welcome to the Worn and Wound podcast. It's different for me to say.
That's correct. You got it. You nailed it.
Yeah, I nailed it. My name's Kat Shoulders. I am the media production manager here at Worn and Wound, and I'm joined today by Zach Weiss, who is the co-founder and the chief creative officer, as well as our executive editor. You wear many hats.
Yeah. Too many titles. I don't know if any of them are accurate. But
yeah. So this is awesome. Thank you for being here. We lost a couple people today. So Blake Buettner is on a beach somewhere with, I hope, a beer in his hand. And Zach Kazan is locked out of his
Light.
A Miller Lite.
That counts.
Definitely Miller Lite. And Kazan is locked out of his apartment. So we are missing. We're a couple men down here on the show, but hopefully he gets back in soon. It's been quite a few hours.
Poor guy. He's been stuck on the streets of Concord, New Hampshire.
I know.
Whatever that's like.
I know. I texted him. I was like,
bizarre thing.
You have your wallet, you have your keys, you have your phone. That's all you kind of really need in life, right?
Pretty much. Well, and access to your home, ideally.
Yeah, that does suck. I guess the traditional thing is to do a wristwatch check, right?
That is.
You want to do a quick one?
So,
what are you wearing today?
Sure. I have on my Zenith Chronomaster Original, Zenith El Primero Chronomaster Original. I don't know how the words go there. I don't know if this has a reference number, to be honest. But yeah, this is a fairly recent pickup of mine.
Yeah.
And it's a fun one. It's very nice looking watch.
I feel like you're definitely still in like the honeymoon phase with that one.
It's funny though. I got this and a Tudor at the same time without really intentionally that happening. Like orders came in at the same time kind of thing. And I kind of expected this one to be the one I'd be gravitate towards, but it's actually the Tudor has been spent more time on my wrist the last few weeks. So it's kind of, I'm waiting. That honeymoon is still, it's such a funny expression. But so I'm still in that honeymoon before I get to this honeymoon. But I am wearing this like quite often as well. But a little bit more just like at home and, like out on the weekends.
They're two like very different watches too. And so it would be kind of hard to I guess it's either easy to compete for time because they are very different, or, one just, when you get two watches around the same time, I feel like that's what always happens. Like one just kind of takes, a few weeks and then it kind of dies down, the love for that one. And then you end up wearing the other one. But
for sure.
This topic.
The Tudor's just such it's just such a daily wear.
Yeah.
Just what it feels like. Whereas this one, I really actually like how solid the Tudor is, and like that it, it's not an inexpensive watch, obviously, but it is the less expensive of the two, but it feels way more solid of the two as well. The Zenith is a bit more, it's a modern watch, obviously, but it feels a little like daintier, a little bit lighter. It's a little bit like a little more vintagey in a certain respect, which I don't know. So I feel like with the way I wear watches, like, the Tudor can take the smacks and whatever of the daily grind, which it already has. There's surprising swirlies and stuff on it. I don't know where they're coming from.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like I'm going to nail this one at some point and really regret it.
Probably. I mean, it's bound to happen at some point. That's the thing for me is like, I have not ventured into like vintage world because anything past like, I don't know, or beyond 1990, I'm scared because I beat my watches up, not on purpose, but I just don't I don't want to think about it on my wrist. It was interesting to hear you say Zenith. Is that is that the way to say? I hear Zenith all the time. Oh, it's tomato.
Zenith. I've just always said it's Zenith, and it's hard to change.
Yeah.
It's one of those things like now, I had they had a lunch event in New York City a few months ago, and I was there, and I had lunch with Romaine Marietta, who's on the podcast the other week, and the CEO and a bunch of other journalists, etc. I'm sure they said the word Zenith many times. I couldn't tell you how they said it. It's it's Omega,
right? It's the
Omega,
same, yeah.
Or however you say Victorinox, Victorinox. I know I get it wrong because every time we say it on YouTube or podcast,
someone calls you out.
Comments.
Of course. There's always the couple people that will call you out. So I am wearing today my Manta SkyQuest. It's the new one that I believe all the customers that bought this watch are getting them either yesterday or today. So probably going to see a lot of photos of these on Instagram in the next week or two. But it's the Pepsi bezel gilt dial that they did, limited to, I think, just 50 pieces. So I was one of the lucky few to get one. But yeah, I love this watch. It's a great watch. Similar to your Tudor, it's kind of, it can take a beating, and I don't have to think about it. I have my name down for an actual Pepsi. Don't know if that day is ever going to come. And now, honestly, I don't even know if I want it to, because I've gotten so scared to take my Rolex with me, like my sub, when I travel. I just don't even want to think about it. I don't want that to be on my mind and kind of ruin any experience I have when I'm away. But yeah, now if I think, I mean, I don't know what I'd do if my name got called. I guess I'd be stupid not to get it, but
yeah, I mean,
I'm not a reseller either. So it's just like, I don't know if I'd wear it, you know? That's, it's just,
it's one of those ones, like, if your name comes up and you're still, like, you know, in the position to get it, like, it's, I think it's silly
don't be that guy.
That opportunity, you know? Yeah. Because if not, I mean, it's not even about reselling. Just hold on to it. Yeah. Things might change. I mean, obviously, the market is currently changing, you know? So it seems like to some extent, right? The Rolex's, Pateks, the hype stuff is kind of tanking a little bit.
No, it is.
You know, but it's still, I mean, more than retail. And there's still just like status of, I guess that's the thing with Rolex, is that the challenge is that they are just so recognizable. Yeah. Whereas, like, I mean, a Zenith, like, on the street, I don't think anybody knows the difference between that and anything else, or, you know, Grand Seiko, or, I mean, even a lot of other of the Swiss luxury brands. Like, you know, I think you could probably wear a fairly expensive Patek Calatrava or something, and nobody would look twice at it, because it's just such like an understated little watch. But,
exactly. It's tough. It's
big Pepsi bezel.
Yeah, the Pepsi bezel, the Jubilee bracelet. I've had a Datejust in the past, and I got rid of it because I thought it was just like a little too flashy, a little too eye-catching. The sub is all brushed. Granted, it is probably the most recognizable watch, but to me, it still kind of flies under the radar because so many other watches look like the sub now. That being said, I'm okay wearing it here at home in Nashville. I feel like we don't really have a huge amount of people that are out stealing watches, but definitely when I travel, it's something that kind of comes in my mind. And
there's a bit of like an inflated thing. I mean, obviously, because it gets in the news, the media kind of hypes it up, and like, it seems like there's been the occasional like high profile thing, but it's like from like an influencer who's been posting their flashy watch and then saying what restaurant they're at or what hotel. Then it's like, well, maybe that wasn't a great idea, you know?
True. But, so we just got back a couple weeks ago from Windup, which we haven't talked about it on the podcast yet. Last week's podcast was our interviews that we did with Astor and Bangs and Standard H, Fortis, and I can't remember who the other. Autodromo. Yeah, Bradley from Autodromo. Such a great time. We are thankful that all the people that came out, and it was so surprising that so many people drove and flew in from other states. I feel like I met more people from out of state than I have in both the San Francisco and the New York, where I've been in the past. But yeah, is there anything that stood out to you as far as watches? There was a couple releases around, and then some people had like some pieces that were like coming out soon. Is there anything that stood out to you?
Yeah, gosh. I mean, there were.
We didn't have a lot of time to like look around. We were so busy too, but.
Yeah, I always get that where it's like, I ran around. I got a couple of minutes at some of the booths here and there, or I'd just catch up with the owner about whatever. And, you know, and then you run around again, and sometimes even it's hard to remember everything you saw. But and I guess this isn't out yet, but it was sort of coming soon. Were those the mechanical Solabs watches? Yeah. Which were definitely the most perhaps different thing there, just from a traditional watch sense, and just so well executed and fun. Yeah, no, absolutely. Definitely, I feel like the more and more I kind of want interesting novelty. Like if something I'm actually going to think about adding to my collection, I really kind of want it to like exist for a purpose in the collection, not just be, another really nice diver. I have really nice divers, but if it's just another one, they're all going to compete. But if something like that, which is totally graphic and has really interesting use of color and a totally different case shape, it's just going to be its own thing.
They really remind me of the watch you have, the Louis Erard. Is it Louis Erard?
I think that one's
my
Louis,
bad. Sorry, guys. Don't call me out.
If he was American, it'd be Louis Erard.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. My Americanness. So yeah, it kind of reminds me of what is that model called?
So it's just like the Louis Erard X Alon Silberstein regulator.
A regulator.
Yeah,
okay.
I don't think it has a specific name beyond that.
Okay. Just in the way that it's very graphic, like you said, very artsy, but coming in at the price point that these guys are probably going to come in, which is definitely sub $1,000. I believe. I haven't. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah, I think its pre-order was like 900. It might be a little bit over 1,000 after, or at least on the bracelet, but it's not like far away from there. They did use a Swiss automatic in there. So.
They're so cool. I definitely love to pick one up. It might be very difficult for me to read. I find those like challenging, but at the same time, it's just like, it's such a fun piece. And it's one of those watches that you'll wear and people are going to ask you about it, which I always appreciate. But yeah, 90%
of the time I look at the dial of my watch, I don't actually like look at what the hands are pointed at,
Yeah.
And then there's times I go to read with the time, but most of it's just like to admire the look of it. So that watch, time telling is whatever. It's secondary.
It's just to look cool.
Yeah.
No, that was certainly a standout piece for me. And I think something I was really surprised by, which William One has been to several windups. I just haven't been able to make it to their booth and was able to go over there and check out a couple of their pieces and was like super surprised, just like in quality and the straps were so cool. So that was something that was just really surprising, kind of stood out for me. But again, there was just so many brands and now that we're getting bigger and bigger, it's just like a blur. Yeah. The whole weekend's like a blur.
The New York Fair, I think, is currently at 58 vendors or something like that. So
that's crazy.
Good luck remembering everything you see there.
I know.
One watch I saw that wasn't a new release at the show, but it was a recent release, but I hadn't had a chance to see it before, was the Oris All Metal. That I think it's called All Metal. The Holstein edition, that weird little watch.
Yeah.
And it was like,
what did you think?
That is like the strangest watch they've released in forever. And there's no way to react to that watch like without seeing it in person. I feel like, because it's so different. It's 36.5 millimeters, but it's got all these subdials on it. The bracelet is almost as wide as the watch itself. So it's like sort of like a thick bracelet on your wrist.
Yeah.
But it's just so weird. Like, and I wouldn't say, not that they're conservative, but Oris has been, they stick within certain lines, there's a lot of Aquases, a lot of, Diver 65s, things like that. So like seeing something like this that was really out of left field was very just exciting from the brand. But yeah, then just seeing it on the wrist, like, I don't know if I loved it or hate it, but it certainly caused a reaction and I kind of want to see one again. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You have to like fill it out a couple times to know how you feel about it. I actually didn't get to check that one out, but I did get to try on the Pro Pilot X, the titanium. And that was pretty cool. That was the first time I was able to try one of those on. But yeah, Oris, like you said, is usually kind of play by the book. And that is certainly something that definitely is like not normal. It's a 90s throwback, right? If I'm not mistaken. Were they referencing that?
I think that they did say that. I don't know if it's like literally a model though. That was, okay. I might be wrong there, to be honest, but I know that that movement or the complication, the like push button GMT thing that might have come out in the 90s. They've used it a few times since, but it definitely looked like some random weird mid 90s. Well, I don't, like the kind of thing you stumble across on eBay at some point, or just like,
oh, that's true.
Can you believe they made that?
There are some definite like strange Orises out there on eBay. I've definitely come across some ones from the late 90s and early 2000s. They did some really weird stuff, but it's cool to see them to like, reference something like that and do something that's outside of the norm. That's not a pointer date or, an Aquas or something like that. So kudos to them. But so at the show, I picked up a Bulova hack watch. This is the blue dial. I think it's the A11, if I'm not mistaken. And we were going to talk about this with also Kazan and Blake, but they're not here today, so we're going to we'll chat about it. But it was a total impulse buy for me at the show. I went over and saw one and like immediately was like, this is amazingly cool. And I think it's funny picking up these impulse buys, right? And I was curious to know from you at any point during the shows that you've been to, have you picked up watches?
So I've actually not. I don't think I've bought a watch at any Windup Watch Fair.
The amount of self-control.
It's. I wish I could call it discipline or self-control, but I think it's more just being so busy and like pulled a million different directions that like I don't actually have time to stop and think for that long.
Yeah, that's true.
But which is, I don't know. I feel like maybe that'll change. This year I was thinking like, oh man, I should commemorate these in some way. I don't know if it needs to necessarily be a watch or if I should just get something.
Yeah.
But there's a lot there. The Bulovas, that was a good call though. And that's like, I feel like the right, unless there's like specifically something you want to see, like, or you're in the mood to spend a few $1,000s. Like the Bulova is such like it's a good impulse purchase watch.
I think so. Yeah. I think like, I'm just thinking back and I have picked up, I think I've picked up a watch every single windup that I've attended. Really? Now this is the first one I worked, but, and I've been on the team, but and I don't know, I need to get out of that habit probably. That's not like super healthy buy a watch at every event, especially as we probably may start doing more of these. But yeah, and that kind of leads me into kind of the next topic I wanted to talk about today was I've gotten to the point in my collection, so shameless plug to the new green toolbox featured in the Windup shop.
Photographed by Kat.
As photographed by me. So I bought one of these and I easily filled it up and I had like watches that didn't even fit in it. And I was like, okay, this has gotten excessive because before I had watches just kind of scattered in my safe, some in Everest rolls and things like that. And seeing them all together and filling up an entire watch box like this that has 12 slots and having some that didn't even fit in it really kind of brought a realization that I have too many watches. And, I question, it gets to the point in my collection where I start to question, why do I own all these watches? And the grand question I think we all ask ourselves is like, how many is too many in your collection? And I don't know how you feel about this. Do you ever get that way where you certainly are like, this is just too many, I'm not wearing all these?
Yeah, for sure. I have at least 2 of those boxes currently filled up. The original red one, though, and some other things. I mean, that's partially watches I buy, and then there's also like all the limited editions because I do get one of all the Worn One limited editions we make. So those alone have added up over the years. But yes, 100%. I think that there is like logical limits, or perhaps it's sort of like a pivot point or a fork in the road where you have to decide like what kind of collector you are. Or like, are you just getting these at a certain point as objects to own and possess, to become part of a collection that are maybe a little bit more, not really meant to be worn so much as appreciated in a vacuum, or the kind of museum that becomes your, bedroom table or whatever it is, top of my dresser as it is, or if you're like really focused on wearing them. And I've definitely reached a point where I have enough that they're kind of interfering with one another. And so watches that I really like or have like memories of, maybe 2 years ago I wore all the time and now I get on my wrist like once a month. Like I occasionally look at them. I'm like I feel bad kind of a thing because like I want to wear them more. So I'm starting to think about paring down. Certainly.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I have a couple different thoughts that go through my head. One is obviously like there's just too many and I know that there's some that I just hardly ever wear. And there's a certain price point that you're okay with that, right? With certain watches that maybe fall under a certain category that you're like, I wear a couple times a month. It's fine. But then as my collection has grown over the years, it's like there's a lot of pieces that are, not cheap watches over 2K, 3K. and them like just sitting around really, really bothers me. And I don't know, I felt like when I filled this box up and I was like looking at it in this closet, I just felt like the walls started caving in on me. And I was just like, got this panicky feeling like, okay, I need to do another clear out. I need to purge this collection basically. And I've done that over the years. I've gotten rid of a lot of stuff and brought it back to just like 3 or 4 core pieces. And then again, started building up from there. And, you know, that's not a bad way to go about collecting. You obviously get to try new things after every couple years, but I certainly have watches now that I regretted selling too. And so it's like finding that balance. And another thing that really pops in my head, and I'd like to know how you feel about this, is I always imagined as the years go by, as I get older, that I would have like 3 or 4 watches. And when people thought about me, they're going to immediately think about those watches. Like those define like who I am, right? Because you see these iconic characters and these people and you know, whether or not they're celebrities or not, maybe just people in your life. And you're like, you know, my grandfather, for instance, he always wore the same watch. And I'd love to have a watch that like identifies with me. But then I also like a lot of watches.
Cat shoulders. Yeah.
You know, it's like it's so tough.
Nicknamed after you.
Yeah. Well, like, you know, maybe one day if I have kids and like they would see me wearing 2 or 3 watches and that's all I ever wore. And like those are me. They're my identity in them. And so that really, really appeals to me. But oh my gosh, like I'm trying to think now like what those watches would be. And I don't even know because it's so tough. Like, and I guess there's no point in it if you don't really want to do it. But I still like, I feel like I would love to be that person. Like I really want to be that person.
Yeah, no, that I definitely.
You're like shaking your head like you're crazy.
No, I haven't thought about it like that. Like specifically with watches, but I've thought about other things in that way. Like for a long time in my life, playing bass was like a really important thing to me. Like high school and in college, it was like I wanted to be in bands and I played bass. And I was pretty good, you know. And I don't know. And then I was in some bands in college, and then in college, like it was everyone who was really like going to be a musician was like they're way more talented and way more serious and could write music and just do all the things. I was just good at playing bass, and eventually it was like this isn't for me. And now people who know me don't even know I play bass, like ever. Okay. And I feel like that was like a part of my identity for such a long time. So it's like weird to me that people wouldn't even know that. So like I don't know how that exactly relates to watches, but I kind of it's like a thing, you know, you associate with yourself, and then you kind of would expect people to think of you like that. Like I don't know if it's like, you know, I forget the name of the Sky watch. What was the Monte you're wearing?
Oh, the Sky Quest. Yeah.
Sky Quest. I can't keep all the names, but just like, you know, is that version of the Sky Quest? The signature cat shoulders.
I don't know.
Watch,
it's so tough because like, I want to be that person that just has a few pieces that I wear for years and years and years, and then at the same time, I just like to try new things, and I like to have like a lot of watches. But then I don't know. I guess I'm just like a little bit bipolar in this way that I want this, but then at the same time, I like having all these watches, and I like having the choices and the options to wear them. But I do let it just really get to me when I have watches sitting in the safe that I just don't wear. That especially when they're over like, I don't know. I think probably the $2,000 price point is like when I'm start to like.
That's the threshold of like, this is a more.
It's annoying that I'm not wearing this more often.
I totally get it. Yeah. And I've also started, you know, like as the volume of watches have built up, but then also the same thing where like, you know, incrementally over the years, the minimum cost of those watches has gone up until now where it's like I've bought some fairly, you know, expensive watches that I never would have even considered buying, you know, or thought I would have been able to buy several years ago. And now I look at them, I'm like, okay, well, I have too many watches, and I could, if I start to flip these and combine them, I could get some really more serious, you know, like higher end expensive watches, which, you know, like one or something. And I kind of like that idea of maybe flipping 3 totally great watches that I'd happily keep, but into one watch that maybe is like something that I only wear on special occasions, that it serves a specific purpose and is, you know, a little bit more in that higher end collectible kind of level of watch, you know?
Well, because I think a lot of people too think about selling everything one day and getting their grail watch, which for me is that's just like completely out of the question. I don't want just one watch. I'd like to just have like maybe 2 to 3. I think I could do that. Mm-hmm. But then, I think about these collectors that have, a piece for everything in their collection. They've got the diver, and then they got the chronograph, and then they have the field watch, and they feel a certain need for everything. And maybe I have too much of like the same thing, and that's why I let it get to me so much. I don't know. It's just it's something that I've been like thinking about lately. I've got like lists on my iPhone notes, and I'm just like listing out everything and like, okay, if I get rid of these, and then maybe just get this, and it brings my collection to this. And I don't know, is this like an OCD?
I think people underestimate it, particularly like if you're not in this hobby, and like the different watches are more than just like a visually different thing on your wrist. Yeah. Like I sometimes, and sometimes I really hope the experience of owning a certain watch will be like literally different, and it will be like my ever so slightly, my life will be a little different with that watch on. Yeah. And like, sometimes it's not, it's just a different looking watch. And sometimes you wear, a watch, and it's like something about it is like, it's elevating or changing, and that was why I was initially drawn to getting a spring drive. It's like, there's something about the idea of the accuracy and the motion of the hand. And like, I don't know, like when I eventually did get one, the SBGA 375, like, that watch seemed different. I don't know. The world was a different place a little, very, very slightly. You know what I mean? And
I love
really,
it.
Like,
no, I love it. No, that's great.
And sometimes they're not. Like, I will say, like, and I don't, as nice as this Zenith, however you want to pronounce it is, I think that my attraction to this watch is mostly aesthetic. I think it's just like it's very appealing looking for my like personal taste, the oversized subdials, etc. And then it has a really cool movement in it. Like mechanically, it's interesting that it does the 1/10 seconds, but it's a little bit more of a superficial piece than this like depth, the deep watch.
Yeah, no, I totally get
which
that.
you can't plan for, and I don't know. Maybe that means I'm already like, honestly, I'm already thinking a little bit about whether or not this one's staying, even though I love the way it looks. I'm just not 100% sure if it has the longevity factor.
And for me, it's like and you've bought and sold a lot, and I've bought and sold a lot. For me, it's like if within the first week I'm already like not really bonding with the watch, it's just not going to last. Like that's the norm for me when I buy a new watch. If I'm already like not in love with it in a week, like it's just not going to be.
And the bar is ever higher with the cost of the watch too. It's like, like this watch is an expensive watch. It's the most expensive watch I think I've purchased. And like, so like I want everything from it. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The Tudor, also expensive watch, less expensive than this considerably. And I think it has more like, I immediately like that watch. I just know, know, you know what I mean? I put it on. I'm like, if it suits me so well, and I don't know if it changed my life over it, but I did wear it. I traveled with it. I'd never traveled with a jump hour before, or jump hour, true GMT, quote unquote. And like, that is just, now I am spoiled on other types of GMTs, and I've already scratched it a few times, and it's like,
it's already,
it feels like it's part of me.
There you go. I mean? There you go. Yeah. Are you the type of person that, because you have bought and sold so much over the years, do you find that you make kind of memories with your watches? And I know we're getting all like lovey-dovey about our watches here, so please forgive us. But do you find that like watches that you have built like memories with, whether you've taken it somewhere on trips, those are harder to sell? Or do you find that it makes no difference when it comes time for you to like decide to let it go?
I feel like, I guess it hasn't come up that much because there was like so long when I wasn't really traveling except for anything but work. Yeah. Now that I, just been like traveling over the last couple of years a little bit more, like taking road trips with my girlfriend, just like upstate and whatever, like those watches that I have taken, like I might associate with them, but I guess I just haven't really dealt with that before. And I've kind of talked about this at other times, like over the years, but like sort of forcing memories into watches to give them significance. Like, I understand if you buy a watch because you had a child and you want to commemorate that, like that is significant. bought a watch for myself within the month of June, which is my birthday month, and therefore called it my birthday present. Like, that's kind of, it's bullshit. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like,
justification.
Yeah, I guess I don't. Yeah, I for better or worse, I don't have any really significant memory watches right now.
I'm the same way, and I think for me, it's all about, because I've always had so many. I have so many watches that I just really haven't had that like one-on-one bonding with a watch. I've certainly taken watches on trips, but again, I'm not really thinking about like, oh, this is like the watch I don't even know. Like I could name trips and I'd really have to like think about which watch like I even took with me. Because I just don't put a ton of thought into it. But I mean, I love the idea of like, you know, building memories with a watch. And again, I think that comes with having a smaller collection where you know, you can do that with, but with like 14 watches that I have now, it's just like, it's not happening.
Yeah. I mean, also like with like the LEs, like the Seiko 5 LE, like that obviously marks a momentous, you know, thing in like the history of Worn and Wound, and it's a watch I got to co-design and all this other stuff, and like,
well, those probably
so
do
there's
hit,
a lot built in there.
They do. I'm sure those hit differently for you, right? Would you say?
They do, but then I kind of I feel a little like weird wearing something I've designed sometimes, where it's like it's a little bit like too self-aggrandizing, be like, oh, I love this watch, by the way, I designed.
Yeah,
you know, like,
I'm sure that's how like, you know, these people that work at watch brands and CEOs and stuff like that. I'm sure that's how they feel sometimes, you know, especially with the smaller brands. You know, wearing
they should
a watch.
Just take pride and be. You know, I just feel weird. But,
that was a home run though, so don't feel bad about it.
Thank you.
It was a great one. Speaking about your Tudor, I want to hear about. So you went up to London, correct, for the launch of the Tudor Ranger, and I'd love to chat a little bit about that. How was your experience?
Sure.
You were out there for a couple of days, I believe.
It was a really fast and very fun trip, where like, you know, we flew out there and we flew overnight. So you like arrive in the morning. So you like lose your night on the way over.
Yeah.
Which is weird. So like you get there, you're like totally out of it. I slept for like 2 hours, and the first day was sort of like arrival day for people. So they didn't really have anything planned. So I just walked around London for a few hours, and I love London. I was there once before, and it's just a fantastic city. And so I just meandered for a few hours. And then I started hitting the pubs on the way back, because like the bars in England are amazing. Like I went into a random pub, seemingly random, you know, I don't know what drew me to it, but naturally it was like, you know, been there for 500 years or something like that. And I ordered beer. I sat down almost with like instantaneously, like Joy Division came on over the radio, and I was just like, how did I find this perfect moment? It's like, no, that's just what these bars are like.
Yeah. It is like the movies.
It's great. It kind of is. Yeah.
So
no, for sure. It's like, and that was like 3 p.m. in the afternoon, you know, and there were people there, you know, and
that's
it was
crazy.
I think it gets a little bit more intense as the night goes on, because they close obviously early, so people have to get their drinks in. At a certain point.
I'm curious to know. So like when you arrived, and obviously there was a couple other people from media there. There's always whispers of like, why are we here? What's the watch that's going to be launched? Did everyone kind of guess like this is what it was at this point?
I mean, I think that there were basically two options amongst the conversation: that it was a Ranger, or that it was some sort of new North Flag.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the North Flag.
That was sort of that one. Yeah, and you know, the North Flag was retired a couple of years ago, as was the previous version of the Ranger.
Yeah.
So the North Flag seemed like a little bit more potentially of like a tie-in to this event that was also the anniversary, which is the British North Greenland expedition. It was the 70th anniversary to the day when they did this presentation and event. But yeah, I mean, they went with the Ranger, like the essentially revisited Ranger. So, you know, in 2014, they released the 41 millimeter Ranger that had a ETA movement in it. And that was retired like 2 or so years ago.
Okay.
And
I didn't realize
that was a watch. Long. Yeah. It's already been off the market for a little while. And that was a funky watch for Tudor. It definitely felt like a bit of an outlier. It had like a drop link bracelet on it. It was like which they just haven't done on anything else. And I always felt it was, it was too big, but obviously it's a personal preference. But there's something about that design. It just felt like it was a large 3-hand watch, at 41 millimeters with a big dial. So yeah, I mean, they, it's pretty straightforward forward, what they did with it, they brought it out in the 39 millimeter case, more or less the footprint of a Black Bay 58.
Yeah.
They put in an in-house movement, and they sort of just refined, various other details. The bracelet isn't a drop lug bracelet. It has the T-fit clasp on it. The way the loom is printed is more of like a traditional pad print where it was sort of built up on the other one. And it's like a very nice 3-hand watch. There's been a lot of fuss and fanfare about it, but it's like, in the end of the day, it's a really nice 3-hand chronometer by a reputable brand. Like, take it or leave it.
I saw like a lot of especially with social media and everything, there was a lot of like either love it or absolutely hate it. I fell very much in the middle. It's not a watch for me. I don't like the printing on the dial personally. I certainly like applied indices better just from my experience with watches that I've owned, but it's not like it's like a very non-offensive watch at the same time. Like this is a watch you could buy someone as a gift, and I think people that aren't into watches would love this watch. And that being said,
I think it has to be successful at retail. I think that's definitely part of Tudor's strategy. It's also an entry point to their in-house movements. Which are very good movements. I think people overlook that I think it's like $27.50 on the strap. You're getting a 70-hour silicone escapement.
Super affordable then, That's pretty great.
I mean, it's a very serious movement at that price point. It really, it's really tough competition for other brands out there, particularly in this sort of Swiss luxury space.
I'm trying to think of like direct competitors to this watch. Obviously, your mind goes to the Rolex Explorer, but like that's just at a whole different level and price point.
Twice as expensive, much harder to get. I mean, you have, I'd say it's sort of a Bremont challenger. Omega obviously comes to mind, the Aquaterra Railmaster.
I think the Railmaster is a good one. That's a good one to put against
and
it.
Those start around $5 now, but they're very similar sort of conceptually. So they really, I mean, that's almost half the price of the Omega. And that's a pretty serious value. And the funny thing with the pad printing, I was just surprised initially by like the negative response to that.
Really?
And maybe it's because I feel like everything is like the competition for everything has gone up, that there was a certain point, I don't know when this happened, like a year or two ago, where I was looking at my watches and a watch is coming out. It's just like, where's like a pad printed dial?
Yeah.
Like everything's
super simple.
Applied.
Yeah.
Like you can't get a Seiko even with like a pad print. Everything's built up. And I was like, I want a pad printed dial.
Yeah.
And like a pad printed and like a matte black dial. And that actually is what led me to getting the Omega Speedmaster Reduced that I have. I had all these blue and green dials and all these flashy things. And I was like, where's like a straightforward pad printed black dial?
Yeah.
So I like that it's like really simple.
Yeah.
That said, and I also pointed this out in the write-up I did the other day, that on the Black Bay Pro, they use these new molded ceramic loom markers, which are sort of a best of both worlds.
Yeah.
So that would have been, I think, a good in between if they'd been able to pull it off. I kind of wonder, because the 6 and the 9 in particular are so like curvaceous and they have these like funky, really tight angles on them. Like if they just couldn't mold something like that.
I don't know. There's something to me too about the font that didn't quite click with me.
Weird.
It's weird.
It's weird.
I don't know what it is. I mean, I've heard a couple people call it different things, but I just I'm not a font person, so I don't know type font very well. But I just it almost looked just like too plain, like too.
What do you think of as plain?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a great looking watch.
I think of it's like sort of. There's something almost like gestural about the 9 and the 6 that is almost like a little jarring on something that is otherwise so precision.
Yeah.
And the numbers are huge when you look at them compared, to the dial. It's like like the Ricetta Big Zero. Like that's sort of like the only other watch I can think of where like the numerals are so huge, I mean, I guess, like aviator type watches are sort of like that as well, but this feels even larger. Yeah.
And I guess it is like a kind of cross between like being a field watch, and I guess it could even be like I don't know. Sometimes I don't even know what the difference is between a field watch and a pilot watch. Honestly, the specs are the same typically. Easy to read. I can't get down to the nitty gritty of it, but
well,
certainly.
then there's also like, is it a field watch or is it an exploration adventure watch or a tool watch? I saw people comparing these also. They're like, you want a field watch, go get a Hamilton. And it's just like, okay, but a Hamilton's like a mil spec style field watch with a very specific dial.
Yeah.
If you don't want that, then this is like, don't get it. Like it's not actually, they're not apples.
Well, and this is like 100 meter water resistant, right? This Ranger,
100 or 150.
It's close to that, probably.
It's one of those two,
and like that's what always gets me about a lot of these field watches, whether it's Hamilton, some of the other brands. I don't even know what this little Bulova that I have, this little hack watch is, but it's probably pretty low. Like it's 30 meters or something like that. It's not usually a ton, and I'm always surprised because like when you think about something you're going to wear in the field, whether people wore it in the military, you want it to have lots of water resistance because you don't know what they're doing. They might be out in the rain, whatever. And I'm always like so shocked that a lot of field watches don't have a ton.
Yeah.
But yeah, this
especially
is nice.
Modern, like I feel like 100 meters.
It's kind of standard.
Like it's kind of standard, and it doesn't seem like it's terribly difficult to realize in a watch. I mean, it's really just a matter of seals and tolerances. And yeah.
Well, and those people that know me like know that I've complained about this for years. Like with just any watch that's meant to be a sports watch, I feel like 100 meters should be standard on everything. Whether
so you don't wear a Speedmaster.
No, and I've owned probably like 5 or 6 iterations of the Speedmaster without actually ever having owned the Boone watch. Actually, just like different weird variations. And now I have the Mark II, which is 100 meter water resistance, which is awesome for that watch, and I had the adjustable clasp on it too before the Speedies had it available, and I don't know, I feel like if you're gonna get a sports watch, something that's meant to kind of wear and be an everyday watch for yourself, like 100 meters got to be like standard in my opinion. But I know a lot of people will disagree with me.
I know. I guess it's like, I think 50 is fine for 95% of things. It's when they're like splash resistant or something. But like, I mean, think about how deep 50 meters is. And like that's a lot of, and it's really a pressure rating, right? Yeah. It's not even like, so that's 5 atmospheres or something like that. Like, it's probably fine for being out in the rain. It's probably fine for washing your hands.
Yeah.
Just don't like push the buttons while you're doing it.
Exactly.
And don't leave the crown out. This is a 50 meter. I just took this off and checked it.
Yeah.
I was curious. But yeah, and then I think that Grand Seiko, the SBGW or whatever.
They're like 30, aren't they?
Yeah, I think they're 30 in the little hand-wound watch.
Yes, like, Grand Seikos, they always do freaking 30 meters. I used to have that SBGN 221, like the GMT, the cream dial GMT that is very popular. And I bought and sold that watch twice. And mostly because of the water resistant. I just was never like super comfortable with it. And it's kind of a sporty GMT. It looks great, but I just can never get over that for me.
Yeah.
And that's why I can't do dress watches.
That's why you can. Yeah, that it doesn't bother me that much, but
yeah.
I get it.
So is this?
We all have our things.
Yeah, we all have our things. Yeah. Is this Tudor something that you feel like? Because you're a big Tudor fan. I mean, do you feel like this could be in your collection at some point, or would you wait for a smaller iteration maybe down the line?
I would wait for a smaller iteration, or I think. So I definitely enjoy Tudor. I've only ever owned one, and that's the one I have now.
Oh, really? Okay.
I never purchased a Black by 58 or anything before, though I always really admired them when I got to review them. Just for whatever reason, never picked one up.
Yeah.
And so now I'm very happy with the Black Bay Pro, and I'm glad I waited for that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't get another 39 millimeter one. Like I wouldn't get a Black Bay 58 at this point either, because it's just too similar in feel and everything to the Pro. So I mean, if they came out with 36 or 37 millimeter version of the Ranger, I would definitely look at it. I don't know if that's, I'm not 100% sure if that's a watch like I need like another 3-hand, sport watch kind of a thing. But if I were to then think about like myself a few years ago, like if they came out with this like 2 or 3 years ago before the Black Bay Pro and like where I just was in my collecting, I 100% think I would have bought it back then.
Well, I think that's what I heard for the most part was that a lot of people really love this watch, but because of the size, they were just like, I'm going to hold out until they make a 36 millimeter, which hopefully Tudor, hears those cries and
yeah. I mean, they have the bezel-less Black Bay models, which, in what's it called? In Watches and Wonders, they released all these like two-tone versions of them, and they started putting in the in-house movements in those two-tone ones, which makes me kind of wonder if that whole line is getting an upgrade. It seems like they're moving away from the ETA stuff. So those were 36, and they black dials, blue dials. Like that could be a really interesting model. Tudor never does what you think or expect or kind of hope or want or whatever. So like I don't know. I wouldn't bet on any of that, but like it seems like an opportunity. But then also, if you're a Pelagos owner, 43 millimeter or whatever, like the 39 is probably a really nice, alternative to that watch.
Absolutely.
Kind of a different experience. So
yeah, totally agree. Well, I guess we should probably wrap it up. This has been an interesting episode, just the two of us.
Totally different voices.
I know, right? People are going to be like, what the heck? Well, thanks for listening to our episode today. And you can find us on Instagram at Worn and Wound, as well as YouTube. I don't even know like what Blake typically says, but hopefully that's correct.
Yeah. WornandWound.com.
WornandWound.com. That's very important. Yes.
Yeah.
And thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next week.